Hey, sixth graders, this is it. This is lesson number 3, where you are going to be making a locomotive or a train engine, depending on what you want to call it, that will tow all of the rail cars that you have made. Now, you notice I am back on our very first rail car. And just like we did with the row of rail cars, I am going to copy this model and I'm going to paste it into a new model. You should have already learned how to do this with our last lesson. So I'm going to click Create New Design. And I'll paste that in there. Now, as I've already said in class quite a few times, you don't have to make everything from scratch. That locomotive on your worksheet, we can use most of the parts that we've already made before. So I'm going to select this, and guess what? Ungroup. When I look at that model, I realize that really all I need to do, excuse me, really all I need to do is adapt a few pieces in here. So I need to ungroup this a couple of times. I'm going to get rid of that hole tool on the top. I don't need that anymore. I'm going to delete a couple of these windows here. And now if I look, I realize that the cab of the locomotive, that's where the engineer is going to sit, is kind of toward the back part of my train. I'm going to keep that window there. There we go, bump that in a smidge. And I'm going to group these two together. And click a group. There, look at that. Shrink that down just a tiny so it fits better on the train. I'm always going to be changing my perspective, though. I want to make sure that I'm getting it on correctly all the way around. That looks about right. Now, I don't have a window on the other side. I can fix that in a bit. All right, now, if you look at that model that I'm giving you, you probably recognize right away that it's a cylinder that should be sitting at the front of our locomotive. I'm going to take this cylinder tool. Notice I moved my work plane up to the front part of the train, so now it's up a little bit. Take that cylinder and rotate it down 90 degrees. I can either use the turning tool or I can just type in 90 degrees. Either way is fine. I'm not going to make this to scale because I do have to stretch this out like this. And oh, it's kind of fat looking a little bit there. I'll see if I can shrink that up a little bit. There we go. Pull that out a little bit like that. Bump that over. Now, if I'm looking at my example, I realize this isn't quite perfect. So I am going to be making some small adjustments. Probably stretch this up a little bit. Maybe not quite that high. There you go. Scale that down just a tiny. Stretch it out a little longer. Bump that over. Lots of little things. I've made this many times and I still have to make some small adjustments to make sure that it works right. So don't feel bad if it takes you a couple of minutes to do. That's just part of learning. We're going to pull this over a tiny bit. There we go. I'm okay if that's a little fat there. Then I need to put the top on my train. So I'm going to put this up here. And I think that round roof piece looks pretty darn perfect for what we need. So I'm going to stretch that out. That's a little too big. Stretch that down. Pull that over. Constantly changing my perspective. I am using my arrow keys to do some small adjustments on my work plane. Here we go. All right. Not so bad. Not so bad so far. Now, the other thing you might need on there, you might notice, is that smokestack. Now, the smokestack itself, of course, is just another cylinder. Pull that on here like this. I might change the color of that just for fun. Go black there. Shrinking this down. I do want that to be round, though, so I'll make sure that's nice and round. Drop this in. Bump it over. It's not quite centered. And it's okay if it's not quite even. It's sitting a little crooked. I can maybe just do a tiny bump on there to make sure my smokestack is a little less crooked. Maybe we'll just move over like, I don't know, I think 3%. Yeah, that works. I am not going to tell you how to put the top part on. You do need to have that on there, but I'm not going to tell you how. Some students do like to also put what's called a cattle catcher on the front. You can take your rectangle piece here and rotate that around on the front. Probably should rotate that down a little bit. that. There you go. Pull this back down here. Do a 180. Stretch that out. Stretch that up. And there we go. A completed locomotive. I am going to group this all together. I don't know if I like that color on there, but that's okay for now. Group it all together. Now my locomotive is done, but I do want to add my locomotive into my row of rail cars. So once again, I'm going to copy it. I'm going to take it over to my other project. And this is where things get to be kind of fun because you can kind of start modifying things on your own now. But I'm going to take that train that I just made, bump all these guys over, paste my locomotive. Holy moly, that's really big. So make sure you hold down that shift key, shrink that down, and now you have a whole train. Notice on your worksheet, though, you need to add some things to your train. So you can put some things inside of your rail car boxes. You could put some things around the outside of it. This is just a chance to be creative and show me some of the other little things that you have learned in this Tinkercad unit. I hope this helps you get your last project done. Take care.